You know the scene perfectly, right? I mean, we've all seen it 100 times in the movies.
Oh, definitely. The classic setup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the dead of night. The camera pans across this quiet suburban street, and there's a figure dressed entirely in black.
Usually a hoodie.
Right, a hoodie. Or, maybe a tactical turtleneck if it happens to be a high-budget film.
Yeah, true.
But they're skulking around the bushes, dodging security lights, moving like a shadow. It's dramatic, it's obvious, and as a viewer, well, you know exactly who the bad guy is.
It's a very comforting image, honestly, in a weird sort of way.
Comforting, how so?
Well, because in that Hollywood scenario, the threat is just so clearly telegraphed, you know?
Yeah.
You look out your window, you see the guy in the ski mask, and your brain instantly categorizes it as danger.
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity at all.
Which is incredibly reassuring because it's binary. Like, good guy, bad guy, safe, unsafe.
Exact.
But when you step out of the movie theater and into the real world, the actual landscape of property breaches is, well, it's completely different. Modern property reconnaissance, what security professionals call pacing, is incredibly deceptive. It's not happening at 2 in the morning.
No, not at all.
It's happening at 10 in the morning, right? In broad daylight, right under your nose.
And the person doing it does not look like a burglar. I mean, that is the critical shift we have to make in our understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The most dangerous threat is the person who looks exactly like they belong in your neighborhood. They're basically relying on your brain's natural tendency to just ignore the mundane.
And that is exactly the core mission for our deep dive today. We're exploring a fascinating and, frankly, kind of chilling set of recent security logs titled Anatomy of a Casing, Recognizing Subtle Property Surveillance Techniques.
It's a really eye-opening document.
It really is. Our goal here is to decode these real-world property reconnaissance tactics. By the time we finish this conversation, you are going to look out your front window and view your morning commute, or just, a typical Tuesday on your street entirely differently.
Yeah, recognizing these threats really requires a fundamental rewrite of how we process everyday visual data.
Right.
You have to stop looking for the obvious villain and start looking for the tiny, almost imperceptible anomalies in ordinary behavior. It's about spotting the moments where the illusion of normalcy kind of just cracks.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the most basic tool these scouts use, which is the human body itself.
Right, the most fundamental tool.
The sources detail instances where individuals use a technique called the casual pedestrian mask. And there's a specific pattern they describe from a July 2nd log as the illusion of forward motion.
Yes, that one is particularly interesting.
The security teams observed individuals acting like completely normal pedestrians on a morning walk. Their torso is facing straight ahead, their stride is totally normal and, forward directed. But their gaze is angled entirely through the extreme corners of their eyes. Like they are covertly monitoring the interior of a property while walking right past it without ever turning their neck.
What's fascinating here is the biomechanics of this. It actively exploits our peripheral assumptions.
What do you mean by peripheral assumptions?
Well, in human evolutionary psychology, we're wired to assess intent based on directionality.
Okay.
So when we see someone's chest, hips, and feet pointed down the sidewalk, our brain takes a heuristic shortcut. It automatically assumes their attention and intention are also directed down the sidewalk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the scout was intentionally decoupling their gait from their gaze to assess resident presence and internal assets. They're basically gaming our hardwired visual processing.
I get the theory, but let's put this in a real-world context for a second. Think about being a normal human in public. We've all tried to pull something like this off.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're at a coffee shop and you're trying to subtly eavesdrop on a really juicy conversation at the next table over.
Right.
Or maybe you see someone interesting and you want to check them out without making it obvious. You freeze up, you stare at your phone, and you strain your eyes to the side.
We've all been there.
But honestly, when you do that, doesn't it feel incredibly awkward? I feel like trying too hard to look natural actually creates an unnatural physical stiffness.
Yes, exactly.
Wouldn't walking down a street completely stiff-necked draw more attention to these scouts?
Well, that is the exact vulnerability trained security professionals are looking for. You've pinpointed the flaw in the tactic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you force your body to act incongruently, like walking fluidly in one direction while intensely focusing all your cognitive energy in another, it requires massive conscious effort.
Why?
You're overriding your body's natural kinematics.
Because normally, if you look at something, your shoulders naturally turn toward it.
Precisely. Your eyes, head, neck, and shoulders, they all want to move in unison. When a scout forces them to operate independently, it creates rigidity, specifically in the trapezius muscles and the neck.
So they literally look stiff.
Exactly. Humans are biologically attuned to recognize this. It's a survival skill, to notice when someone's body language doesn't match their environment. When there's a mismatch between a person's gait and their gaze, it creates this subtle, jarring effect. It just looks mechanical.
So the stiffness itself is the primary red flag. The very thing they're doing to hide their interest is what actually broadcasts it.
Yes. And because maintaining that forward-facing stiffness is so difficult while trying to gather complex visual data, scouts often use a supplementary tactic.
Which is what?
Well, the sources from early July call it the head tilt sweep.
Yeah.
In these instances, the individuals walk normally, but upon reaching a specific threshold, usually a vehicle gait, they execute a sudden, distinct head tilt.
Wait, why the gate specifically? Why break the illusion right there?
Because the gate is the primary threshold of visibility into the most vulnerable parts of the property.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the driveway, the garage, the sightlines into the front windows. That sudden tilt is a rapid data gathering maneuver.
Right, because they can't keep staring out the corner of their eye.
Exactly. They can't maintain the sideways glance long enough to get the details they need, so they redirect their focus in a split second.
Wow.
They're mapping out internal lighting, noting where the high-value vehicles are parked, tracking any resident activity. It's a snap movement.
So they walk by trying to look casual, execute this mechanical head tilt to sweep the interior, and then just rapidly snap back to that forward-facing posture.
Yep, that's exactly it.
It sounds incredibly calculated, like a physical algorithm. Walk, walk, snap, scan, walk.
It very much is.
But the sources also mentioned they're incorporating everyday items into this performance. Like in a July 3rd log, there are mentions of subjects wearing visible AirPods.
Right, the distraction props.
Now, if I see someone in jogging clothes with white earbuds in, I think absolutely nothing of it. It's practically uniform for a morning walk,
Which is why it's the perfect prop. It serves as a visual masking element. It completes the costume of the casual pedestrian, basically signaling to your brain, hey, I'm listening to music, I'm in my own world, just ignore me.
Oh, man.
But the threat assessment reveals the operational purpose. Those earbuds allow for active, hands-free communication with an unseen accomplice.
So they're on a call.
Exactly. They can be narrating everything they see in real time. Gate is closed, 2 cars in the driveway, lights on in the second floor. And they're doing this without ever moving their lips much or holding a device to their mouth.
They're literally building a dossier on a house while looking like they're just deeply engrossed in a true crime podcast.
It's brilliant in its simplicity, really. However, there is a limitation.
Which is?
Well, the limitation of just using your body or an audio connection is that human memory is fallible. If a scouting team is targeting a high-value property, eventually they need hard visual data.
They need pictures.
Right, they need a camera. But the moment a pedestrian stops, pulls out a smartphone, and points it at a house, the illusion is completely shattered.
Of course. That brings us to the technological escalation in these logs, which, I gotta say, reads like something out of an espionage thriller. But it happened on a totally normal suburban street.
It really did.
A July 5th log details a methodology they call the tech-assisted scout, and it involves the subject posing as a scrap dealer pushing a loaded cart.
Now, I want to highlight how intentional that specific cover identity is.
Okay.
A scrap dealer has a socially acceptable, legitimate reason to be moving very slowly down a residential street, lingering and looking closely at properties.
The cover is flawless. No one's going to question a guy collecting scrap looking around.
Exactly.
But the execution is where it gets wild. This individual had a mobile device concealed inside a flip pouch in their front shirt pocket. The camera lens was oriented outward, recording everything as he pushed the cart.
A completely hands-free, chest-mounted recording device, perfectly hidden within the uniform of a street vendor.
But here's the problem. Because the camera is fixed to his chest, he can't just point it with his hands to get the angles he needs. To capture higher sight lines, like where the security cameras are mounted under the eaves or second-story windows, the individual executed what the logs call a reverse tilt.
Such a strange maneuver.
He maintained a fixed gaze on the property, while physically leaning his upper body backward, bending at the waist, to angle the hidden chest camera upward.
And while executing this maneuver, the security observers noted something really fascinating.
Tell me.
The individual exhibited intense physical stress anomalies. Specifically, he was ballooning his cheeks, like puffing them out, and tightly compressing his lips right before abruptly fleeing when he detected someone moving inside the property.
Okay, I have to pause here because
Yeah.
visually, this is a lot to process.
It is a lot, yeah.
Let's think about this logically. You have a guy pushing a heavy scrap cart.
Right.
Suddenly, he stops and starts leaning backward like he's dodging a bullet in the Matrix, all while puffing out his cheeks and aggressively biting his lips.
It paints quite a picture.
Here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit confusing for me. That sounds completely ridiculous. It sounds infinitely more conspicuous than if he just pulled his phone out of his pocket and pretended to take a selfie.
You would think so, yes.
Why on earth would someone go through those bizarre physical gymnastics? Wouldn't holding up a phone be less suspicious?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems counterintuitive until you analyze the psychology of a covert operative under pressure.
Okay, break that down for me.
Remember his primary objective: preserve the cover identity at all costs. He is a scrap dealer.
Right.
If a scrap dealer suddenly stops pushing his heavy cart, pulls out a sleek smartphone, and holds it up at eye level to film a house, the prop is instantly broken. The illusion vanishes.
All right, right.
And any security guard watching the cameras will immediately dispatch a patrol.
Okay, I see. He's basically trapped by his own disguise. He has to keep his hands on the cart to justify his presence.
Exactly. The reverse tilt, as physically awkward as it is a calculated tactical risk. It allows him to keep both hands firmly on the prop while still getting the footage.
That is wild.
Now, regarding those physical stress anomalies, the lip compression, the cheek ballooning, these are not conscious choices.
They're not.
No, he isn't deciding to make those faces. Those are involuntary autonomic nervous system responses.
Wait, really? So his body is basically betraying him?
Yes, due to extreme cognitive overload. Think about the mental bandwidth required for this operation.
That's got to be huge.
He's navigating a heavy loaded cart down a street. He's maintaining a fake persona. He's operating a hidden recording device.
Yeah.
He is mentally calculating geometry and camera angles via a reverse lean. And he's simultaneously scanning the perimeter for security threats.
That is like trying to do advanced calculus while carrying a refrigerator on a tightrope.
That is a great way to put it. And on top of that cognitive strain, his bloodstream is flooded with the adrenaline of committing a covert illegal act.
Right, the fear of getting caught.
Exactly. When human beings experience that level of acute stress and the underlying fear of discovery, the autonomic nervous system just takes over.
Wow.
Blood vessels constrict, which causes the lips to tighten and compress. The respiratory system becomes erratic. People often unconsciously hold their breath or puff their cheeks to stimulate the vagus nerve and forcefully regulate their breathing.
So the very moment he realized someone inside the property was moving, when he realized his surveillance might be compromised, that physiological strain just redlined.
It peaked?
The facial tells peaked, and his fight-or-flight response made the decision for him. He bolted.
It's a textbook microstudy in the biological tool of deception. The human body simply cannot sustain that level of incongruence without leaking clues.
Which brings us to a major pivot in the source material.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a single scout, like our scrap dealer, ends up failing because the physiological strain of maintaining the lie is just too high, the tactic has to evolve.
Yes, the evolution of the threat.
The logs show that the next step isn't to train better individual actors, but to shift to coordinated group efforts. They stop relying entirely on overcoming their own physical limitations, and they start exploiting our psychological ones.
This is where we see the introduction of staging and social distraction plays. They literally weaponize the very fabric of human social interaction.
The recurring pattern, documented in the March and July logs, is incredibly manipulative. It involves auto rickshaws or taxis pulling up directly to a vehicle gate curb.
Yes, a very common scenario.
But it's never a quick, simple drop-off.
Hmm.
An adult female is in the vehicle with minors. The vehicle stops exactly at the boundary line of the property, often right in the blind spot of the main security camera.
Which is very intentional.
And then, the adult intentionally creates a massive delay. She prolongs the entire process of settling the fare with the driver, fumbling for cash, arguing about the route, whatever it takes.
She is artificially engineering a localized traffic jam of social interaction right at the most vulnerable threshold of the property.
And here's the kicker. While she's doing this, while all the ambient attention is focused on this loud, mundane act of paying a driver, One of the minors systematically crosses the boundary line and physically advances onto the property to test the defenses.
This specific tactic relies heavily on a psychological phenomenon known as inattentional blindness.
Inattentional blindness.
Yeah, we only have so much mental processing power. When our attention is captivated by a demanding or unusual social interaction, we literally do not see other things happening right in front of us.
It is exactly like a magician's sleight of hand. Like the adult at the curb arguing over the money is the bright, flashy distraction. She's the waving hand holding the deck of cards.
Right.
The audience, which is the neighborhood security or the residents looking out the window, has their attention completely locked on resolving that awkward transaction. Meanwhile, the real trick, the physical breach of the property line, is happening quietly in the peripheral vision.
That analogy is spot on. But this raises an important question. There's a deeper sociological layer here, too.
Oh, like what?
Think about your deeply ingrained social etiquette. When you see someone struggling to pay a bill, counting out change, or having a prolonged, slightly tense interaction with a driver, what do you do?
Honestly, I look away.
Right.
It feels incredibly rude to stand there and stare at someone who's struggling with a transaction. You want to give them space.
Exactly. We naturally avert our gaze to grant them privacy. We are socially conditioned to ignore the exact mechanism they're using to camouflage the breach.
Wow, that's dark.
The adult is banking on your politeness. And furthermore, they're using minors because society inherently views young children as a non-threat.
Which perfectly transitions into the most insidious tactic detailed in the sources from a log on July 3rd. It describes the use of unattended minors acting as primary scouts.
This one is particularly alarming.
Yeah, the log details two primary school-aged children repeatedly loitering and intentionally pausing directly adjacent to secure access gates. They're doing this in the morning, leaving, and then coming back to do it again in the afternoon.
And consider how the average person, or even an untrained guard, processes that visual information.
They don't process it at all.
Yeah.
If I see a couple of 7- or 8-year-olds kicking a rock around my driveway gate, my brain just says, oh, it's local kids playing. End of thought.
Right.
You don't call the police. You don't even really register it as an event worth remembering.
Because your brain is acting like an aggressive spam filter. If our minds processed every single movement in our environment as a potential threat, we would be paralyzed by paranoia.
Yeah, we'd go crazy.
So we rely on heuristic shortcuts. We categorize massive amounts of data as safe and immediately delete it from our active awareness to save cognitive processing power. Handlers, the external parties organizing these casings, know this perfectly well.
So they use kids because our spam filter automatically sorts them into the safe folder.
Precisely. The threat assessment explicitly warns that these children are being deployed to check gate closures, to time how long it takes for an automatic gate to latch after a car passes, and to scout structural vulnerabilities right at the perimeter.
That's just wild.
They can stand there examining a lock for 5 minutes, and no one will question them. It's a highly sophisticated manipulation of both our biological wiring and our social empathy.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Let's bring all of this together. We've covered a lot of ground, from people artificially stiffening their gait, to scrap dealers enduring autonomic stress responses to hide cameras, to coordinated teams using our own politeness against us.
It's a lot to take in.
If you're listening to this, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed or suddenly very paranoid that, every jogger and every kid with a soccer ball is an espionage agent.
And that is absolutely not the goal of analyzing this intelligence. The ultimate takeaway from these security logs is that context is everything. You cannot let a single data point trigger a panic response.
Right. The document is very clear that a single pedestrian looking at your house is not a reason to call a SWAT team. The critical concept here is stacked anomalies.
Exactly, stacked anomalies. You're looking for a cluster of unusual behaviors that break the baseline rhythm of your environment. It's the unnatural body mechanics. The stiff torso combined with the darting eyes. It's the repeated passes by the exact same casual pedestrian at strange intervals throughout the week.
Yeah.
It's a specific vehicle consistently staging and delaying in your camera's blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sudden mechanical head tilt at the precise moment they reach the visibility threshold of your gate.
It's about spotting the friction when they try to fake normalcy. And if you do start noticing these stacked anomalies, the sources provide very clear, actionable steps.
They do.
First, flag the activity. Acknowledge to yourself or your security team that you saw something out of place. Do not let your spam filter delete it.
Very important.
Second, update and review your security footage. Look for the patterns you might have missed when you weren't paying attention. And finally, the most basic but arguably most crucial step.
Yeah.
Ensure your perimeter gates remain securely locked at all times.
Yes.
Do not leave the door open for the minor while the adult is busy paying the rickshaw driver.
By doing that, you are actively hardening the target.
Right.
You're taking away the easy opportunity, which is usually enough to make a scout move on to an easier target. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to really chew on when you start your day tomorrow.
I love a good thought experiment. Lay it on us.
I want you to look out your front window tomorrow morning during the busiest part of the day.
Okay.
Observe the specific, everyday rhythms of your street. Notice the joggers, the delivery drivers dropping off packages, the landscaping crews, the people walking their dogs, the kids heading to the bus stop. Every neighborhood has a unique ecosystem.
Right.
Based on the ecosystem of your street, ask yourself, what mundane, everyday activity could someone flawlessly mimic to observe your home for 30 minutes without ever looking out of place?
Wow, that brings it all right back to where we started, doesn't it? The threat isn't the guy in the black hoodie skulking in the moonlight. The threat is the person wearing the exact right costume for a Tuesday morning on your street. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep your eyes open, and we'll catch you next time.